Will you ever talk about Conan the Barbarian? It's getting a new movie and it has great lore and comics. Oh boy. This is the kind of question that gets me into trouble, because I could give a 3-hour answer to that right now. Next month I'm starting yet another new channel. That's just what I do in my life, I just start channels. And it's basically a channel where I talk about every show and movie that isn't Highlander. My focus is still Highlander Lore, but because Conan is my second favourite franchise, my first video will be about the upcoming King Conan movie and why it shouldn't be made. So that video has got everything. It's about a franchise I and others are passionate about, but it's a controversial take, and I made the thumbnail like a week ago. You know, I am fucking myself over by not using AI for thumbnails, but I just refuse. I think it's decent looking, you know. Crom is angered. But the channel is called Great Goose Media. Why? Why not? Highlander the card game. That's a great idea, Drakmar. That's a niche as hell channel. You're going to have a harder job than I do. But that's a great idea. Because, and I've got an example, and it might have been you that said this to me. Like in a video I said, it's not clear whether Nakano's powers of illusion come because of the quickening or not. And someone, and it could well have been you, said that in the card game it was because of the quickening he had those powers. So, okay, here's the thing, and this is, I'll give you the gist of that Conan video and a brief overview. Because again, we don't have comic culture over here. I know that in the States, a lot of people know Conan through the Dark Horse comics, at least before the John Milius 1982 film. But here, I was introduced to Conan with Arnie's, again, John Milius film. Loved it, loved it. I've got 2 tattoos, Highlander, Conan. Love them both. And then you had Conan the Destroyer. But through the movies, I went back and discovered Robert E. Howard's original Pulp Fiction Conan stories, and I fell in love with them. They eclipsed everything. Now, sometimes when that happens, fans will turn against the Milius movies, the Arnie Conan, because he's so different from Robert E. Howard's. I'm not like that. Crom has room in his heart for both John Milius's Conan and for Robert E. Howard's original. But this King Conan movie that's following up the first two the first one is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea, in short, spoiling my own video here, because it will fail. It will fail massively. Because the reality is, yeah, I'll be excited to see it, I'll watch it, probably love it. So will others of my age and above. There's just not enough interest in that Conan out there, and there's not enough appeal left of Arnie to make that financial. It will fail. I will tell you, it will fail. So look, as much as I want to see it and others want to see it, if you care about the future of the Conan franchise, what you should be trying to push for is a reboot. Yes, we had a reboot with Jason Momoa. Didn't work out because the script was terrible. What you want is what they were trying to do at Amazon, which is to have a show, a live action show based on Robert Howard's stories. But at the time, the CEO of Amazon was this really progressive left-leaning woman, and she took one look at those scripts that were really politically incorrect and true to Robert E. Howard and said, no fucking way. But she's gone now. This modern Amazon is the one that's doing Highlander, you know. It's the one that did Masters of the Universe. This is the time. So I'll get a lot of hate for that video, but I'm right. They are... Okay, sorry, last thing I'll say, because I know you guys, for the most part, aren't Conan fans. They're doing an animated thing based on Robert Howard stories. I don't care, quite honestly. I care about the live action stuff. But the point is, if they go ahead with King Conan, and because of the failure of Masters of the Universe, they might not. But if they do, it will flop, and we're not going to get any more Conan for like 2 decades. That's the problem. Also, why do we have to ignore Conan the Destroyer? Okay, this is Conan kind of deep lore here, but every time King Conan has been proposed throughout the years, they always specify it will ignore Conan the Destroyer and follow on from Conan the Barbarian. But why? Conan the Destroyer isn't a Highlander 2. Yeah, it's not as good as Barbarian, but it's not Highlander 2. It's a harmless little adventure. I don't know. Sorry, guys. Yeah. I will explain all in that video. So in fact, I should have put a link to the channel in the description, but whatever. Catch up here. Yeah, I used to have a lot of swords, including Connor's sword. But because I used to collect swords before I sold them all. But throughout the years, I think only once have I seen a Highlander sword that was genuine, that was functional. Almost all of them are hollow stainless steel things, you know? Stephen Lee Miller mentions The Hunted. That's a Highlander sequel, unofficial. He even kills the bad guy in the end by cutting his head off. Yeah, I won't use AI, I just won't. Giovanni mourns the loss of the Highlander game. I'd like some kind of Highlander game. Apparently Amazon owns Conan. I didn't know they owned it, but I do know that Conan was going to go there. That's right, it was unhinged, Stephen. He was, I couldn't believe it. And he still is overweight. Again, I'm not trying to be unkind, but when you're going for a role like Ramirez, it's questionable. But it's the opposite way with Dave Bautista. I'm sure those of you who care about such things saw those shocking photos of Dave Bautista. And this was, by the way, about a month before he was supposed to shoot for the Highlander reboot in November of last year initially. You can't, again, this is the reverse of the Russell Crowe thing. If you see this guy and he's supposed to be playing the Kurgan, you can't blame me or anyone else for going, holy shit. This could be a problem. Especially when this Kurgan, he's not up against Christopher Lambert, who's like me. I don't know how tall Christopher Lambert is, but I'm 6'1". But as you can see, I'm not a bulky guy. I'm pretty slim. Lambert's like that. Cavill isn't. Cavill's Connor MacLeod is physically intimidating. So the Kurgan cannot look like this for him to be a plausible challenge. It's just reality. So I was terrified when I saw that photo. You know what, Stephen? I didn't even know that Hunted got a theatrical release. That shocks me. I wouldn't buy the Cavill katana because I don't buy stuff like that anymore. I'm not one for collectibles or anything. So, you know, I've tried to emphasize so many times, in so many different ways, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, that one, I'm crazy, and two, I'm very Connor MacLeod-like. Like, I love talking to you guys about Highlander and that, but I'm very antisocial. Don't ever mistake me for a nice guy. Like, I'm not interested in making friends. I will never ever do collaborations. Like, I've never even once considered any of the sponsorship offers, you know, I've been offered for this channel. I not even considered them. The reason is, in my maybe cynical view, but also based on experience, there's no point bringing trouble to your life by working with other people. Because obviously when you work with other people in any way, you have to rely on them as much as on yourself. And I'd rather not do that, frankly. So, yeah. The Hunted is dope. Yeah, The Hunted is great. Becky Owen says, Cavill's Connor is freaking hot is what he is. You do realise these are public comments. This isn't... Your husband can see this if he checks. On another one of my channels, I had a guy who was speaking like that the whole time, even though he's married. James, I wonder if you're here. You might see this. In fact, no, James won't be here. You know why James won't be here? I was speaking to him on a stream on another channel. This Irish guy I know, right? For years, known him for years. And he said, I don't watch your Highlander Lore channel. It's too normie for me. Bloody cheek. I mean, I guess it is pretty normie compared to like stuff I'd usually do, but still. He's sitting there lusting after all these women, you know. Out of all the historical figures featured in the TV series The Immortals, who was the best fit and who was the worst? And who would you personally add to the list? Was there that many? All I can think of is Byron off the top of my head. But I don't know if it's very tasteful to do that, to take a real historical figure and make them immortal and do this stuff. I mean, Byron's one of my favourite characters in the Highlander TV show. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that ethical? Is that right? But I can't think of anyone I would make immortal. Steven says, well, my wife isn't much of a Highlander fan, and she's looking forward to this new film. Not sure why. Well, I said it before in one of my videos. In fact, I showed you an example. And just for the benefit of those who haven't seen it, I mean, this is presented as a joke, and it is funny, but it's not a joke in the sense that I didn't fabricate this footage. This is a reaction that someone had. You know, I've got over 40 videos on this channel now. Over 40, that's crazy. It feels like I've been doing this forever, so it feels like it should be 10 times more. Shit, I can't remember which video it was. But it's that reaction video, you know? Yeah, it's funny, and it was meant to be a funny bit of this video, but it was still her genuine reaction. And she's not the only one. I don't know if any of you guys, like me, make a habit of watching reaction videos, but I do, especially about Highlander. Shit, I'll never find this video. I won't look for long. But yeah, the point is, before I made my last video, talking about Henry Cavill is nothing like Christopher Lambert. At all. But I understand why they cast him, because obviously no insult to Christopher Lambert, but he never was a normal guy. You know, he was always kind of a weird guy. Which obviously we don't mind, but I think for the average, I mean, when you watch a lot of reaction videos, like women especially that scene in the bar with Brenda, I'd like to walk you home, Brenda. Almost every woman who reacts to that thinks that's creepy, which I guess these days it is. So, yeah, if you're going to appeal to younger folk, especially women, you don't necessarily want a Christopher Lambert. But of course, I understand, before anyone says it, that was the whole point. The whole point was that because he was immortal, he was supposed to be strange, you know? He was supposed to be someone that didn't fit in, and that came across as strange. But I guess that nuance is lost on a lot of people. And do you realise, and it may escape some Highlander fans because they're so into Highlander, the first movie doesn't even tell you that immortals get more powerful by cutting other immortals' heads off. Doesn't say it, doesn't imply it. But even as a kid, I kind of took it for granted. I don't think you can get away with that in the modern day. I think that with modern audiences, you basically have to spell it out a bit more and say to them, yeah, this guy is, these guys are getting empowered, you know? Whether or not they'll actually define that this time, I don't know. But I do think you have to spell it out a bit. And I'm not saying that younger generations are stupid. What I am saying is that they're used to more overt media, you know? Gotham says, I relate to people like Adrian and Christopher more than today's actors. I really hate it how they didn't start a new character. I really hate it how they're recreating Connor MacLeod. I wish they wouldn't. And it's not just because it makes my videos very awkward, because now I've got 2 Connor MacLeods to deal with. I just think they should have started a new character. I don't know. Well, I do know why they didn't. It's because Connor MacLeod has name recognition. So, yeah, there's that. But I wish they'd done something different. Because, arguably, they've chosen the path of most resistance. In fact, you already see it. If you cast someone as a new Connor, as a new Kurgan, and a new Ramirez, you're going to just invite people to say, as they do all the time, you'll never beat Clancy Brown as a Kurgan, you'll never beat Sean Connery as Ramirez. If you create new characters, yes, you lose the marketing from the name, but at least you don't have to compete with that. Yeah, I'm not sure that was the best choice, but you know, I don't know everything. It could have been exactly the right choice, you know. I don't know. But I wish they'd done something different. But then again, if it had been down to me, as you know, I'd have been more radical. We don't even call it Highlander anymore. Now, the studio would never allow that. They'd say, you've got to call it Highlander. That's the name recognition. Actually, screw that. We're going to be brave. We're going to call it Immortal. Because that way, we're not confined to having someone from the Highlands of Scotland all the time. We don't have to have, not just, you've got to appreciate, even now, here in the Highlands of Scotland, there are literally more sheep than people, right? It's a very sparse area. It's a big problem up here. Not only is there a very small population, but almost no one wants to move here because there's nothing but moors and mountains and things like that. And that's 2026. Go back to the medieval times, you could probably count how many people were in the Highlands like very quickly. So the idea that there's not only 2 Scottish Highlanders that are immortal, in fact 3 Jacob Cahill, 4 Warren Cochrane, but 2 of them are from the same clan? What the hell? Yeah, that's stretching it, but whatever. Yeah, I would have called it Immortal. So then what you could have done is had Immortal Highlander, Immortal Texan, Immortal Tibetan, Immortal, we're going to say Japanese. What do you call a guy from Japan in that tent, you know? Immortal, say samurai, you know what I'm saying. But no, now it's called Highlander, so once again, if we ever have a movie or a series that's about a non-Highlander, like The Raven was, we have to have a subtitle. Highlander the Raven. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so the Conan thing, I will respond to soon, and I don't know who I would make immortal historically. Do you have a road not taken what if? And what I mean is, if a character A never met character B, for instance, my favourite road not taken, what if, I like to think about is, what if Richie hadn't died? You know, when I first thought of Highlander Lore, I thought of certain series I wanted, and one of them was a what if series. But I did it once in the first episode of the Highlander Lore podcast and never again. You know why? Because Highlander is so convoluted, it's too long. It's impossible. It would be impossible with edited videos. Even for that podcast, I spoke for 2 hours or more, so I had to cut it all down. And the first hypothetical was, what would happen if the Kurgan beat Connor at the end of the first movie? And do you know why it went on for so long? Because I realised that it would depend on the timeline. So I sat there speaking for God knows how long about, okay, Highlander 2, the Kurgan wins the prize, then the ozone layer disintegrates, and we have to hope that the Kurgan works with Alan Neyman to build the shield. Does he? Well, the Kurgan will get fried too, so I guess he has to. So now it's a sitcom where the Kurgan is coming in each morning to have coffee with Alan Neyman. Like, hello, pretty. You know, so maybe the Kurgan builds the shield. But then if the Zeiss thing is in play, what does Katana do? Nothing, I guess, because in the script of Highlander 2, the Kurgan was sent by Katana. If it's Highlander 3, I sold Kane short, to be honest, in that situation. Because I said, okay, so in the Highlander 3 timeline, Kane emerges from the cave and the Kurgan beats him easily. I just said that. Then I thought, that's not right. Because I think we all agree that the Kurgan is not stupid, right? But I don't think he's as smart as Connor. So maybe Kane's illusions would be more effective on the Kurgan. Maybe Kane would have a shot. In the series Endgame timeline, all I know is that my inspiration, our blessed brother, the totally innocent, the totally just Jacob Cahill beheads him eventually. But the point is, I spoke for like 5 hours, and I thought I could never do this again. So yes, I have thought of what if scenarios many times. It is fun, but it would only work on a live stream, you know? A live stream like this. You know, you notice I barely mention The Raven, the series. And it's not because I dislike it. I think the Raven is the worst thing it can be, in my view, which is fine. They say the worst thing the thing worse than being hated is when people are indifferent. Indifference is worse than hatred. And the reason I don't mention the Raven is because there's nothing interesting to say. It's fine. It doesn't add anything to the mythology, really. So, yeah. I mean, I could talk for 10 years about the Raven alone. Yeah. I like Elizabeth Grayson. She's hot. Not a fan of the short hair, though. Who is your number one favourite hero and villain, and who is your number one least favourite hero and villain? I assume these are about Highlander, not generally. Are there any characters in the series you wish to return? Yeah, I'll answer this one straight away. Kim Soon and Felicia Martins. Also Caleb Cole, but he got beheaded. If you could go back in time and alter parts of the series, what would they be? Oh, that's a hell of a question. Okay, favourite hero and villain. Okay, well, favourite villain, Jacob Kell. He's innocent, totally innocent. Everything you saw in Endgame is a watch or lie. Connor deserved it. And that was another series I was going to do, Devil's Advocate. But knowing YouTube like I do, I realised that people wouldn't get that I was joking. A lot of people, and it's not worth the hassle. Favorite hero, like I say, I'm more Connor, but I love Duncan. Duncan is the ideal. So alter parts of the series. Wow. I mean, there's so many areas you might change the series for different reasons. I could change it to have more explicit beheadings. I could alter Season 4, Episode 3, The Innocent, so that Richie and Duncan don't decide very dubiously to behead Mikey. That's probably the most fucked up decision in the whole series. I would change Forgive Us Our Trespasses so that Stephen Keen beats Duncan in the end. I would change They Also Serve so that Richie actually serves some purpose and Duncan isn't, as usual, the badass who solves it himself. There's so many things I would change, quite honestly. Sorry, the comment. There's so many comments. I'm struggling to keep up, but I'll go back to them. So there's lots of change about the series, really, just for quality purposes. Oh, I'll tell you the main thing I'd change about the series, and I know this is a very nerdy technical thing. I just want an HD re-release in the 4:3 aspect ratio, because for those who don't know, Highlander is 4:3 initially, you know, and because streaming services don't want to upset younger generations, what they almost always do to achieve a widescreen format, which you can't do natively with 4:3 footage, is they zoom the image in, they force the image in, and as a result, you get widescreen technically, but the top and bottom of the screen are cut off. So we were supposed to get a Blu-ray release that was 4:3 remastered and all that, but we didn't get it, and I think it's because the last of, William Panzer died first, just after the source. He was ice skating, he fell, hit his head, sadly died, and then Peter Davis years later died in his sleep. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it wasn't long after he died that we never heard anything about that Blu-ray set again. I think that without him kind of calling the shots to a degree, there was no interest in that. But yeah, I would like a remaster, because again, you watch The X-Files, a show from the same period, and it looks like it was filmed yesterday. Highlander is rough as hell. Okay, one from you, Becky. Okay, this is going to be a deep one. This is the kind of discussion that could get us into trouble. Immortal origin theory, the children of Cain. God curses Cain for slaying Abel, causing him to wonder. Cain says that surely men will kill him for what he has done. God sets a mark on him that no man may kill him. Ramirez mentions the flood. Mythos said he witnessed some of what Christ did. More on that in a minute. If Highlander exists within the realm of Christianity, then it's plausible that immortals are all half-siblings, because Cain existed before the law of God set for the Israelites at Mount Sinai when he declared, "No more close familial marital relationships. Therefore, immortals cannot have children, otherwise it goes against Levitical law." This comes nearly 3 years of study to become a... So, Becky is apparently a licensed ordained minister. I successfully passed my test 2 weeks ago. Well, congratulations, first of all. If you can perform exorcisms, let me know. So, I want to start with something that Becky alluded to there, and my memory is not infallible, but I swear the bit from the source she alluded to there about mythos affirming the teachings of Christ, I swear to God that's only present in the Russian cut, and it was cut from the Western cut. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But she's right, and I'll show you that scene very briefly, just in case any of you haven't seen it. So, give me a second, I've got to go to Amazon and make sure it doesn't dox me as usual. Yeah, Amazon doesn't know what it's selling or why, so I've got like 2 versions of Highlander 2, and this version of the source, which should be the Western version, they're accidentally selling the Russian version, which is fine, because the Western version is just the Russian version cut with new bookends. Oh, I'm already at the right scene as well. So, again, maybe I'm remembering wrong, and the Western cut also has this as well. But just in case, so the context here is that this is after they've been captured by the cannibals, and Giovanni's bitching about how God wouldn't let a true Christian die this way, and this is the response of Mythos. I might have to pause it for copyright reasons. Okay, I'm just pausing it there so I can play it without interruption and I won't get copyright struck. Okay, so that, if I'm right, and they did cut that out of the Western release, I can understand why, because that's quite a powerful... Because that line of dialogue, okay, it doesn't affirm the whole truth of Christianity, but what it does affirm is that the figure of Christ had supernatural powers, you know? So that's what Becky is referring to, you know? So, Becky talking about the origin of the Immortals, there's... I get comments about it all the time, that the Immortals should be fallen angels, and I guess my question for people who would advocate that kind of solution is, how would that explain the fact that holy ground is the sacred soil of every tradition? You know, if it explicitly affirms a Christian worldview, then why, like, is a Buddhist shrine holy ground, you know? You know what I'm saying? That would be my question on that. Give me a second, guys, I'm just going AFK briefly, but this time I did make an AFK screen, so I'll be right back in just a moment to answer more questions. I just need to pop to the bathroom briefly. Thank you all for being here, by the way. So I've said before, I'm a believer that some things should be left a mystery, and that includes most questions about the immortals. And the thing is, if you affirm a theology, it's not even that it risks annoying those who don't believe in that theology. It can also risk annoying those that do, you know? Okay. Sorry, I'm hopelessly lost in the comments, but I'll get back to it. If you had the chance to write your dream Highlander story, what would it be about? I have no idea. Thank you for the compliment there. I seem to remember at Highlander the Found Dimension, in the theatrical cut, when the one immortal, he's referring to Pierre, takes Connor's place at the guillotine during the French Revolution, when they cut his head off, the quickening comes out and destroys the guillotine in front of everybody. I only saw Highlander 3 in the theatre that one time, and I seem to remember that happening. VHS, the so-called director's cut, that didn't happen. I was just wondering if you know anything about that. I, for one, have never heard of a version of that nature. So what is possible is that you're just misremembering it. You know, we all do that. But given the state of Highlander, who knows what versions have existed? Who knows? But I've certainly never heard of it, you know. I have always wondered, although I think I have the answer, why they called, you know, because the original title for Highlander 3 is the Sorcerer. But then in the States they changed it to the Final Dimension. And I think I know why. I think it's because a lot of the States is highly religious, and they wouldn't necessarily want a mention of sorcery. Because that may sound crazy to some, but we're talking 1994 here. And years later, Harry Potter had the same problem. So that's the only reason I can think for the title change. But it sure is annoying. Even now, you know the Masters of the Universe movie? In Europe it's called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe because the original series was. But growing up, we didn't get the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because Ninja was too it implied too much violence for our sensitive selves. So we got the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. I hate that shit. I hate things having different names in different countries. Uh-oh. Question I always dread. Could you please make a video of the child immortal who almost kills Richie? It must be real hard to live that young looking, but yet be so much older. Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys, I hate Kenny. I don't like him at all. I just don't think, you know, a TV series is obviously going to explore possibilities, so I get why they had Kenny and Mikey and stuff like that, but I don't think Highlander should go in that area. Because obviously it leaves you thinking scenarios like, what if Duncan and Kenny were the last ones? So Duncan has to behead a 10-year-old, basically, or a teenager. I don't like having to think about that kind of thing, really. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of Kenny in all kinds of ways. Again, I understand a TV series exploring that, but I don't like the implications of that, basically. What I'm shocked about is that Kenny has so many fans. Gary mentions an immortal baby. Peter Wingfield, I don't know if it was a short story or something, but he wrote about that, you know, the tragedy of an immortal baby. That's something I definitely don't want in the universe, you know? Again, nice as a thought experiment, but no thanks. It's not right. It just, I don't know, doesn't... If anything makes me uncomfortable, it's that kind of thing. Really. Yeah, John mentions a Little Tin God, where of course you have Larka pretending to be God. And the Reverend in that at the end, he begins doubting his faith because he thinks, wait, if this immortal can fool members of my congregation, what if all the historical prophets have just been immortal frauds. And it kind of concludes with Joe asking Duncan, what if that's the case? Or he says to Duncan, is that possible? And Duncan says, no, it isn't. And Joe says, how do you know? And Duncan says, faith, Joe, faith. And Noah says, will you ever do a review or talk about the Highlander comics down the line? Yeah, again, because I'm the guy that started Highlander Lore, I guess I have to. I kind of have that obligation. That kind of thing could be hard to get hold of, though. Not as hard as the novels, though. Yeah, Evan, I said that recently. Going to the series from the movies, one of the many shocks I had was, wow, there's so many damn immortals. And these guys are like my next door neighbours. I apologise if I've missed any comments. It was hard to see, especially with shades on. Okay, I'll have to focus on questions. But yeah, I will make a video about Kenny and Mikey and everyone eventually. What year did you get into Highlander? I saw the original film in theatres and watched the TV show. I think I've made 2 videos, because I try not to talk about myself on this channel except for it relates to Highlander. So I've only made 2 videos where I had to think about that, and I can't get a year because I was too young. But I do remember that Highlander 2 was showing on TV at the time when I first saw the original movie. So I'm guessing it was 92, because movies would usually show on TV after a year after the theatre. The theatre. But I'll tell you, just as we struggle to get anything up here in the remote Highlands, especially pre-internet, even VHSs. I didn't own Highlander on VHS until I imported the so-called director's cut from the States in the early 2000s. For all of my childhood, I was watching a VHS recording that I recorded from BBC One night. And that thing was worn out to hell. So, yeah, I'm going to say 1992. That's when I first saw Highlander. And my life changed forever. And now I talk about it all the fucking time. Now I say there can be only one more times a week than any sane man should. Funny how things turn out. Do you think the mystique of Highlander will be dispelled in favour of fact? That the curtain will be lifted to show the machine behind the magic? No, I don't. I don't think Stahelski will make that mistake. Like I say, I don't think... I know he's... Again, I've heard from my source, a very reliable source, because I do have sources, I can't make a video revealing certain stuff because that would expose them immediately. But I have heard that Chad Stahelski doesn't like quickenings because he doesn't like the mystical stuff. But that doesn't mean he's not going to have quickenings. He knows he has to. But what I'll say is this. He may not like the supernatural stuff that much, but he will not, I repeat, he will not give us the Highlander equivalent of midichlorians. He will not try and explain the mystical through practical or physical mechanisms. He just won't do that. Becky says we're about the same age. It really changed. The most major thing it did that is awaken me to music, because I've got an older sister. And growing up, the only music I was really exposed to was whatever she was playing. But music just never grabbed me until I saw Highlander. That Queen opening, Prince of the Universe. I thought, what the hell is this? And obviously, as a little boy who, went outside with my friends, we made wooden swords. We would play the pavement/sidewalk is lava. As that kind of little kid, it's not just that this music sounded good, it's that it was talking about immortals. It was fucking awesome. And so I fell in love with Queen. Through them, I found David Bowie, and that's how it all started. Sorry, I'm trying to give up. Barry said, the Mikey immortal bothered me less than the child immortal. In my head canon, any disability a pre-immortal has before their violent death, they're stuck with forever. Well, that's canonically correct. The Mikey thing is ethical, because for those who don't know, long story short, there's this episode, Season 4, Episode 3, The Innocent. Mikey is a mentally impaired immortal who often can't control himself, and he ends up killing people by accident sometimes. So Duncan and Richie decide to perform, I guess, some immortal eugenics, and they make the decision to decapitate him. Which they're going to do before Mikey realizes what they're going to do, and then he puts his head on a train track and decapitates himself. Okay, so first of all, that episode would never fly these days. That in and of itself is a terrible decision. You're telling me that Amanda doesn't know some place this guy can go? That is not a good solution in and of itself. But especially when you consider the kind of fuckers that Duncan has let live. Think of Season 3's obsession with David. David, my namesake sadly, he's not mentally impaired, and yet this guy got a woman killed because he's so obsessive. But Duncan spared him, but he's not going to spare Mikey, he's just too much hassle. Kenny, perfect example. He is malevolent, and because he's a kid, Duncan will kill him. I have a big problem with it. Like, I'm not offended, I'm not clutching my pearls at it, but I just have a big problem with that. And I don't know how many of you have seen Dexter, but there's a big fan complaint about Dexter, because long story short, for those who haven't seen it, Dexter is about a guy who is a blood splatter specialist for the police, but he himself is a serial killer. He kills people he thinks are evil by a code. But one of his associates, Dokes, the guy who gave us the wonderful, both the meme where he's looking suspicious and the surprise motherfucker meme, eventually Dokes discovers who and what he is, and he ends up captured by Dexter. So here you have a moral choice that's given to Dexter, a really interesting one. Does he not kill Dokes because Dokes isn't evil? He doesn't fit the code that Dexter's supposed to kill by. But of course, if he doesn't kill him, he'll be exposed. Or does he break his code and kill Dokes to make sure no one discovers he's a killer? Really fascinating dilemma, except the show gives him an out by having another character kill Dokes in Dexter's absence. And that's precisely what that episode The Innocent does for Duncan and Richie. Because the writers on some level knew this is fucked up. So Richie takes Mikey into the tunnel to behead him, and the writers just knew you can't have Richie doing this. So that's why they have it so that Mikey does it himself. So it takes away the responsibility from Richie. Nah. Not comfortable. But to me, it makes no difference because they made that choice. It's like Gareth making comments there. You know, if I drag Gareth out of his house in the dead of night with the intent to execute him, right? But someone does it before me, that doesn't absolve me of the fact that I was going to execute him. You know? And just the fact that Duncan and Richie couldn't think of anything better than beheading this impaired guy. Maybe it's because, you know, my mum was a social worker, so I grew up around individuals who were mentally impaired, and maybe it's that gives me a kind of extra sensitivity. But again, the kind of people that Duncan does spare elsewhere, it makes no sense. Becky says they could have just taken Maggie to the same place that they took Ursa. You know, you're right. I mean, I would feel terrible for Mikey being stuck with Ursa because I hate Ursa. Or even wherever Amanda took Michelle Webster, you know. So yeah, sorry to go on about it, but Draven is talking about the kill counts. Kale had 661 confirmed kills. Duncan had 200 something. If the 200 something kills had 5 kills each, that should be worth 1,000 plus kills if you think about it. So if Kale only killed immortals without kills, That's an even 661. But if Duncan was, yeah, it's maddening. It's maddening. Look, I told you earlier not to mistake me for a nice guy, so let me reveal to you now what a nasty bastard I am. You know why I hate Ursa from The Beast Below Season 1? I hate him for the same reason I hate Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings. And for the same reason I hate... what the hell's his name? Another Sam from Game of Thrones. Sam... You know the one I mean. It's a certain kind of character. Oh, and Hodor from Game of Thrones as well. It's a kind of character that is supposed to make the audience go, oh, you know, they're useless unless they evolve, they have an arc, but they're always kind-hearted. I just hate characters like that. I just, it's too sentimental for me. I mean, it's why I prefer the Lord of the Rings books over the movies. The movies are way too sentimental. I can't stand it. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, because you guys will be big fans, but like, I hate the relationship between Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings, the movies. It's too sappy. I can't stand it. Sorry, guys. Evan says, never watched Dexter. The whole premise bothered me. Not because it's so insensitive, but because it's cringe. You're not wrong. Like, are we going to make a family-friendly serial killer? That's always a problem. I agree. And you know, I don't like Italian gangster movies for the same reason. Like, Goodfellas is great. Casino is great. So many great gangster movies, right? But what puts me off them is that there are people who think it's cool to imitate them and act like that. Like, The Sopranos is a great show, but let's not pretend that Tony Soprano and his associates are anything but evil scumbags, because they are. Oh god. Predator XYN has gone way beyond me, and he's attacked the Lord of the Rings books. They're incredibly boring. Well, I only read one of them. An ex-girlfriend of mine had Lord of the Rings books, but for whatever reason they weren't split into 3, they were split into 6. I made it to the first one, where Boromir dies, but in the books, Boromir doesn't have this epic scene. He dies off-screen in the books, interestingly. But yeah, it's not my style. But you know, see, this is why these streams go on for so long. And by the way, because this happens every time, if you see the length of this stream and it turns out to be 12, 13 hours, don't worry. I'm an expert at this, you know. I've done it countless times, then gone to work just fine. Like, I love Robert E. Howard. You get these debates. Robert E. Howard versus Tolkien versus George R. R. Martin. First of all, those authors themselves would hate those debates, and they'd hate the idea of attacking one another. They're just different authors with different styles. They're all good, but I prefer Robert E. Howard. That's all. Like, when you open The Lord of the Rings, you've got to read like 50 pages about a hobbit's birthday party, and I could not give a fuck. Again, Tolkien, great man. World building, exceptional, but it's not for me. I just don't care. Other people do care, that's fine. But I want to read about Conan discovering another cult, or going up against another wizard, and it's like boom, 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 boom. Action, you know? So the chat is going so fast, and I appreciate it. So again, don't take it personally if I ignore comments. You know what, Nuria, you broke my heart. Not that you'll respond, but Becky says, I would rather just watch the extended versions of the movies. Life's too short for me. I'll watch Willow. Willow was all the Lord of the Rings action I need. And a nice efficient 2 hours. I don't need a 15-hour marathon. Drakmar, in preparation for his channel, says, now I just need some skill with video editing. I was going to say it's not hard, but then again, I've been doing it for over 20 years, so I don't know. You be the judge. One thing I will say is that you will have to fork out money for proper software. You can't get away with free software these days. It's not worth it. Yeah, Becky says, I'm so glad that I'm not the only one that found the Lord of the Rings books are kind of boring. Yeah, but we don't entirely agree, because I would take the long-windedness of the books over the sappiness of the movies. I'm sorry, again, it makes me sound mean. Maybe I am, but I can't stand Sam and Frodo's relationship. Mr. Frodo, like, constantly. It's like, we get it. We get it. And again, I don't like those characters that are meant to make the audience go, ah. And there's that fake out at the end of the Fellowship where Frodo's rowing away to be on his own, then Sam runs in the water, and they do this fake out drowning where he's in the water with his eyes open. It's like, well, let him drown then. You just sorry, I'm getting too mean. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'll stop. I just don't like that kind of character. Like, it's not, you know, who's the guy from again from Game of Thrones? Sam Tarly. That's it. Like, no, like when Sam Tarly makes some statement that illustrates his incompetence, I'm not going to go, oh, you know, bless him. Like, no, I'm sorry. Sorry, I just don't feel that way. Wheel of Time, I've never read that. Never read that. Ah, Becky, I love Willow. It's one of my favourite movies. My favourite movies growing up, Highlander, Conan, Willow. Loved them. Obviously others as well. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But yeah, you know that new Willow series on Disney? I didn't consider watching it for 2 seconds. Like, I did dismiss that one offhand. Not because I thought it would be bad, although I'm sure it was. But without Val Kilmer, it's not Willow. No Mad Mardigan, no. Sorry. I love Willow. Okay, I've got to share this memory with you. So, generally, between the United States and here in the UK, you guys get screwed over for story, we get screwed over for violence. By which I mean that, at least in the old days, if your movies are censored, it's usually for narrative reasons. Like, your original version of Conan, it cut out this stuff at the end where Conan is sitting there contemplating his future, because the studio said, American audiences don't give a damn about this, they just want to get to the end, get the next adventure. Over here, to this day, our Conan fights are butchered, because in this country you're not allowed to show horses or any animals in apparent distress. So to this day, both Conan movies are butchered because they can't show horse falls and stuff. I mean, we only got the uncut version of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with the Blu-ray release. Like how crazy that is. And little did I know growing up, watching Willow as a kid, our version of Willow was also majorly cut. Like the fight between General Kale, cool villain, and Mad Mardigan. In our version, they're on the walkway, Mad Mardigan stabs him. So the DVD gets released, and me and a friend have watched this movie to death. And we watched the DVD version, not knowing that finally we've got the full version, and our minds are blown. Because, like, when Mad Mardigan kills General Kale, it goes on for like 4 more minutes. That was one of the best days of our lives. I've never seen The Dark Tower, Becky, but I do love Labyrinth. And they are kind of sister movies. Although Labyrinth is twisted in many ways. What's the one where the horse dies in the swamp? Is that the Neverending Story? There's something like that. Anyway, sorry. What's your favourite quickening from either the movies or the TV show? For me, it's Duncan taking Byron's head to Alpha 8 Omega. This is weird, right? Because there's around 135 quickenings in the Highlander franchise. And of all the quickenings he named as his favourite, it's also my favourite one. I love it. I love it. And for those who don't know, years ago, I imported Mother Earth Love Truth from Germany, the album on which Alpha 8 Omega is. I uploaded it to a channel, and although I've lost the details, the login details, because it was like 15 years ago, 14 years ago, here we are. You can still access it here. So if any of you want to hear that, you can hear it. But that's why I haven't responded to the comments, because I don't know how to get back in. I've never seen Krull. I've never seen Tron. Never seen Krull, never seen Tron. But you guys would be ashamed of me. Because, I mean, I've never seen, like, Back to the Future. I know. I'm sorry. My favourite reactions are Connor versus the Kurgan church scene, or when Wash dies. Wash? Who's, not sure who that is. Beastmaster, I know. Yeah, that's how I recognise the actor from Caleb Cole. Beastmaster is very impressive. Praetor says, I got confused a few months ago. I thought Kull the Conqueror was Conan too, and Tia Carrere was the villain in it. If you mean the Kevin Sorbo Conan the Conqueror from the 90s, it was supposed to be Conan 3, because you had Conan the Barbarian 1982, Destroyer 84. So they were trying to get Arnie back to do this King Conan movie for decades. Which is ironic how now that his popularity is gone, he's fighting to get it done. But he should have done it back when, in the 80s or the 90s. Well, that Kull the Conqueror movie from the 90s, it was supposed to be the third Conan movie. But Arnie wouldn't return, because he was pissed off that they made Conan the Destroyer so child-friendly. So then they said to Kevin, I think it's Sorbo, okay, you're going to play Conan now. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm not taking on a role that was made popular by Arnie. I can't compete with that. So he said, okay, we'll take another of Robbie Howard's characters, Kull the Conqueror, and this won't be a Conan movie, this will be a Kull movie. So there you go. Now that you've given me an excuse, I'll tell you another reason this King Conan movie shouldn't be made. I explained before, it will fail, we won't get more Conan for like 2 decades, that's the main reason. But people are saying, oh, it's the fulfillment of the promise. Because the first 2 Conan movies end with a promise that we'll get the story about how he became king. Finally, we're getting it. You're not, though. This story isn't about how he became king. This is about Conan when he is king. It's not the same thing. You're never getting that movie about Conan becoming king. And people will say, well, Robbie Howard wrote stories where Conan was king. Yes, he did. But number one, Howard didn't have in mind an 80-year-old Conan. And number two, why are you pretending to care about Howard now? Again, I love the Conan movies with Arnie. But they're not only totally different from Robbie Howard's Conan. John Milius, as much as I respect him, he had no respect for Robbie Howard. He called him a nutcase, Didn't know the most basic facts. He just took the name of Conan and made his own thing, which again, I love. But why pretend to respect Howard now? That ship has sailed. Praetor talks about how Arnie wanted to reprise the role of Dutch. These actors, I think, are always wrong. Like, am I the only one who loves Predator 2? But Arnie says it doesn't work because it's in the city. I love it. Danny Glover is a great action hero. Yeah, I know Back to the Future. Continuing on this theme tonight of me being a miserable bastard, I don't really like comedies. There's very few comedies I like. I like Meet the Parents. I like the Naked Gun movies, including the new one. I knew Liam Neeson would be awesome. Didn't the quickenings get lame as the series went on? Like an obligation of the universe instead of exclamation point on the fight. I always thought they were impressive. And thank you for reminding me of something I wanted to say about the quickenings in response to that person. Yes, my favourite quickening is from the modern Prometheus. There are other notable ones, like from Duende. One of the horrible ones is from, I feel, Leader of the Pack, where the house lifts and Duncan says, should have got earthquake insurance. That's horrible. But I was embarrassed, by the end game quickenings, because like any good Highlander zealot, across the years, I not only introduce any girlfriend I have to Highlander, but any friend group I have. When I was younger, I got a group of friends, new friends, to sit down and watch the Highlander series with me. And I remember specifically, and I was like 19 years old at this time, I remember specifically when it got to the beheading of Connor in Endgame, one of the people present said, oh wow, this quickening is going to be massive. And I was like sitting there sheepishly like, sort of. Because the thing is, in Endgame, the quickenings look better than in the series, but maybe because that's so expensive, they're so short. I mean, the average immortal, think of who's an immortal? Okay, in the bonus video this month, I'm talking about Alfred Cahill from Season 1. This is a brand new immortal. He doesn't get a chance to take a single head before Duncan beheads him. His quickening is bigger than Connor's beheading, Pretty damn sad. Pretor asks, wasn't one of the quickenings in a planetarium? Yep. That was Kamir from The Wrath of Kali. That's a great quickening. Thank you very much, Drakmar, for the $5. He says, I think there is a chance that Kevin McKidd is Duncan. He's listed only as recurring cast member. Once going to be Connor and could carry a series. Maybe, I'd love that, but maybe he's a bit old. You know what I don't understand? Is that Drew McIntyre is listed as Angus in this reboot on Wikipedia. But if you'll recall, Angus in the original movie is the red-haired friend of Connor, the only one who stands up for him during his banishment. Kevin McKidd is the actor with red hair. Drew McIntyre looks more like Dougal, his cousin who turns against him, so I don't know what's going on there. BCSYT says, Adrian Paul should have been Ramirez. You know what, that sounds so crazy to me, I can't see it at all. But I get comments saying that all the time. All the time. It's crazy how people's opinions can differ. The Indy's a great episode. That's a fucked up immortal there. Crippling that woman. But there is something that makes me laugh about that episode, and it's not the first time it happens. At the end, having killed, what is his name, Constani or something like that, Duncan comes in and he says, don't worry, you're a widow now, basically. But he does it like this gangster who's had to kill someone for the first time, and he's got to have a stiff drink to get over it, even though this guy in the last 4 years has beheaded like 70 people. That's funny. Like he says, could have done without the giant JVC sign in the background. Even blurred out, it seemed disrespectful. Well, I talked about that in a video. You may have missed it because it was buried in a Highlander 2 video. But there's a sinister plot there. Gary says, I like how all the Highlanders are going to be these super jacked, well-nourished men who clearly never had a year where the harvest didn't come in and they couldn't out. Yeah. Especially with Henry Cavill. Consoni, that's it. As he says to that woman, I killed you so many years ago. One of the most evil immortals. One of the most evil. Okay, you've got me going, guys. You win. You win again. Hello, the immortal Telrimus. I'm going to make a video about this, a hot take. Duncan should have lost his fight and forgive us our trespasses. And the way the show is now, that episode, at the end, you know, Amanda and Mythos are concerned for Duncan fighting someone when he's got a guilty conscience because he might lose. And in the end, Duncan says to them, "You guys still don't get it, do you? I had to fight the best fight of my life knowing he'd do the same. It's just the fates that decide the winner." And Mythos says, "Trial by combat. Whoever survives is proved right in the eyes of the law." And Duncan says, "Bright boy." That's the only explanation we get, and it's presented as if Duncan did something clever, as if he outsmarted Amanda and Mythos. Am I crazy, or was Duncan's plan just basically, if I lose, I deserve to lose, and if I win, I deserve to win? Am I missing something? See, what I think should have happened is that Stephen Keen should have beaten Duncan, and Duncan would have been spared. Stephen Keen would have showed mercy, so that for once Duncan in his life has to rely on the mercy of others. He's so used to beating everyone, kicking everyone's ass, but this one time, he's dependent upon the mercy of others. But because of the kind of character Duncan is, they wouldn't have done that. And I don't know if Adrian Paul didn't want Duncan to be weak, so they would never have done that, but I wish he'd been humbled at least once. That's my opinion. But even without that, I don't understand this plan that Duncan thinks is so clever. Because again, as far as I understand it, and I could be missing something, it does boil down to, if I lose, I deserve to lose. So in that sense, Mythos and Amanda weren't wrong, right? Nuria says, "I'm going to see Henry Cavill. He's so sexy and handsome. I want to see Henry. Yes, I'm going." You know, Nuria, I think you're a bot, right? No offense if you aren't, but I suspect you are. I used to think you had some genuine love for me. You'd show up in my videos, leave love hearts, then realize, but every time I make a video mentioning Henry Cavill, she shows up. I'm betrayed, you know, very, very Romeo and Juliet. We're talking about the first death. You know, there's a lot. The thing is, guys, when you're running a channel, which you ideally should be, where you actually care about what you're talking about, you always have to balance it with the health of the channel. So there's a lot I'd want to talk about, but I know would hardly get views, and the channel needs views to survive, as I do. And this is an example. Like, the script, I want to make a video series on the Highlander script by Gregory Wyden, and the differences from the movie, but I don't think anyone would care, or very few. And also the first death, because, believe it or not in the script, and the first death in the movie doesn't exist. This is why, like in the first Highlander movie, you know when Connor is lying there, quote unquote, dead, and Angus says to Kate, "He's a Highlander, by God. The last he should hear shouldn't be that of a wailing woman," or whatever. You know how you can hear him breathing there? That's not a mistake. Connor is breathing for a reason. It's because first death wasn't a thing till the TV series. The Immortals didn't actually die as such. They just became more like in a coma or unconscious, then they came back. And that's why, in the pub scene, in the bar, you know, just before they attack and banish him, Dougal says to... Connor asks Dougal, "What's the matter, Dougal?" And Dougal says to him, "You, talking and breathing, and last night, all but a corpse." All but a corpse. Not a corpse. You know, he's not saying he was dead, but he was in a state where no one thought he would survive. Very interesting to me. Would anyone watch such a video? No. The Immortal Talramus says, "Duncan reminds me, recurring villain in the series called Xavier, who loses his hand but doesn't grow back. I assumed Immortals had a regenerative healing factor. Maybe they should, but in the classic Highlander they don't. And by the way, the reason that Xavier St. Cloud wasn't on my top 5 Immortals of Season 1 is because I can add him in Season 2 because he comes back. Barry says Cavill's agent has hired Spanish-speaking bots to haunt social media and hype their client. That's fine. As long as they're adding to the engagement of my videos, it's all good. All the bots in the world could show up. Yeah, you're right, Becky. A members-only video might be a good idea. That's what the members-only videos are good for. Anyway, sorry, I've been distracted from the questions for too long. In fact, since we're talking about quickenings, I also want to say, you know, even though it's my favourite Highlander movie, so I hate to say this, Endgame had the worst beheadings of all. They were very lazy. Because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but in the first Highlander movie, you had two different kinds of immortal beheadings. Those that were like regular people being beheaded, and then those like the Kurgan where energy spilled out. And it obviously depended upon how powerful the immortals were. In Endgame, they do the same thing. Like, so the guys in the Sanctuary are beheaded like normal people, and at the Last Supper. But Connor and Kale, they have the light come out. But you know, when the Kurgan gets beheaded in the first movie, they use a combination of prosthetics and special effects to make it look cool. You know what they do in Endgame? It's very lazy, and when you see it, you can't unsee it. They just have the actor tilt their head back, and then they added a digital effect later. It's very, very lazy. Pretoric says, Endgame is where they did the awful white flash, wasn't it? Do you mean the flash immediately after a beheading? If that's what you mean, then yes, it was. It is Endgame. I agree, Duncan did need to be humbled. At least do something different, you know? I mean, I hate to pound on the same drums, but I do care about these things. Yeah, it is that. Rhetorics. It's, you know, I never found that annoying, but now that I think about it, I'm not surprised if people did. Okay. Okay. Not that many questions to go, but as is often the case with Highlander, they're really deep questions. So I'm just gonna pop away for another bathroom break briefly, and I'll be back in like 2 seconds to answer those questions because they're very deep. But I appreciate you. My webcam hasn't turned to total shit yet. It does insist on turning. It's got a bit of a life of its own. See, before I do any stream with this webcam, because it's so low quality, I can never get the coloration right, so I have to mess about with it. It's not doing bad. Now, someone in chat mentioned an immortal battling with addiction. Oh, see you later, Gareth. That was very sad. Now, I'm going to assume, even though he's not the only one, the only immortal, that you're talking about Brian Cullen from Season 3's Courage. A lot of people say his story is sad. I never found it sad. I have way more sympathy with Byron, because there's 3 immortals. Well, 2 immortals, main immortals, and 1 mortal that get addicted, specifically to cocaine in the Highlander TV series. And, you know, Highlander was ahead of its time because it does understand that addiction, as the saying goes, is not so much addiction as adaptation, which is to say, there's a reason. So, Brian Cullen's reason for addiction is that he was the most famous swordsman in Europe, and he became afraid because people kept challenging him. Byron's reason is that he feels empty. Whereas you got Steve in Diplomatic Immunity Season 6, and, well, his problem just gets worse after he kills that woman, you know? So, I just feel more sorry for Byron. I think because Brian Cullen, he tries to take Duncan's head in the end. You know, he's manipulative, you know? Whereas even Steve, the diplomat's son, he's sorry. He's sorry for what he did, you know? Would you rather there be solid factual lore that gives real answers? Maybe even consequences delivered for an infraction? Or are you happy with in-universe speculation? I don't know if I'll ever reach a definite conclusion on that. But I'm going to always err towards vagary. Like Holy Ground, my favourite way of that being handled is Highlander 3, where they can fight on Holy Ground, they can hurt each other, but they can't behead. And when Kane goes to behead Connor, that supernatural stuff happens. I like that. That's powerful to me. You know? So, yeah, I'd go for don't explain it. Okay. It was said in previous versions of Highlander that when an immortal takes another immortal's quickening, he or she gains all their knowledge and power. We saw very little of that. Would you like to see immortals in the reboot actually demonstrate newly gained knowledge and abilities, increase speed, and so on? Definitely not, because I don't want Highlander to become another superhero franchise. But the knowledge thing, you could do crazy stuff with that. Imagine, I think the reason they didn't ever, well, very much show knowledge being absorbed is because it would complicate things. Let's say, like, all of us are immortals and we know each other in real life. And we've all got these complicated relationships. So Drakmar is in a relationship with Becky, but Becky is cheating on him with George, right? So if Drakmar beheads George and gets his knowledge, it's not just that he might get better at sword fighting, he knows about that affair and every other thing of George's life. Think how complicated plots could be, you know? You'd have to have a genius writer to do that, you know? Becky says, Byron carries the weight of creative brilliance. He sees the world in a different light. The only thing I don't like about the portrayal of Byron is in the opening where he outright kills that mortal guy by encouraging him to jump. Because it's one thing that later on he gets that kid to take drugs and the kid happens to overdose. That's not, as Mythos said, that's not technically his fault. But if he's encouraging mortals to do things that he knows will kill them, that is his fault. So I think they made him a little bit too evil in doing that. Are you planning to do a video on Search for Vengeance? Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And I will eventually. What's your favourite novel, series, and sword? I've never read any Highlander novels. They were never released here, and they're all out of print now. Series? You mean like season? Okay, this might be controversial. My season preference list: 4, 5, 3. Wait, 4, 5, 1, 3, 6, 2. The reason that might be controversial is because I put season 6 above season 2. I don't like season 2 of Highlander. Like, it's got more good episodes than season 6 does, obviously. But for me, like, the season 6 episodes that are good, that are worth watching, they're so good that they overpower the season 2 highlights. Like, I'll take one indiscretions over whatever the good episodes from season 2 are, you know? So, yeah, that's my take. I'm not a fan of season 2 at all, really. I do like season 1, you know? Season 1, you know, where it's Duncan. Is that family unit? I have a lot of affection for that. Rhetoric says, if you want an interesting read about Lord Byron and some other poets, I recommend Tim Powers' The Stress of Her Regard. Well, I write poetry myself, and I'm, you know, I am interested in poets. And Byron is one of my favourites, as chance would have it. I really wish that maybe not with the same character in Search for Vengeance, but a mature rated anime series of Highlander would have been unreal. Anything would have been good, I think. Blazing says, we'd like to see a really old immortal who died naturally at 85. He's got to learn to fight at that age. They all seem to be in their prime. None of them ever became immortal at late age. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, I don't know how old Sean Connery was when he filmed Highlander, but he sure looks old. And that's why, as much as I don't want child immortals or octogenarian immortals, the game is inherently unfair, no matter what. The example I used before is, what if Kate from Endgame comes up against Kane from Highlander 3? She's fucking doomed. She's just doomed. There's no scenario in which she wins, so the game is basically unfair. Anyway, you know. And even Ramirez, is it fair that this, I don't know, maybe 6-foot guy who's in his older years inevitably has to fight this 7-foot tall Russian who was killed in his prime? Not really. Another video I'm considering making is about the difference between Connor from the first movie and Endgame. So I'll just throw it out there. Do you feel that the Connor MacLeod of Highlander Endgame was consistent with the Connor we saw earlier, especially from the first movie? Rhetorix recommends a Joan Jett video. Of course, I can't watch it now because of copyright, but maybe I will if I get into a certain mood. So my favourite Highlander sword. Okay, I'm sorry for this very boring answer, but it's got to be Jacob Kell's primary sword from Endgame. Jacob Kell uses several swords in Endgame. He uses that dual blades at the Last Supper. He beheads Carlos with his own sword, I believe. But the one I'm talking about is the basic broadsword. That, you know, he dices Connor with in the graveyard, and that he fights Duncan with. Because if you are an immortal and you've got to fight duels, that's a very practical sword to have, you know? See, I knew there'd be a debate in the Connor thing. See, I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Because again, I love Endgame. And on the one hand, I see the point that people are making, But then on the other, if you think about how Connor was in the first movie, if anyone is going to end up as someone who just wants to fucking have it all end, surely it's that guy, you know? Oh god. Britter says Endgame Connor had lost everyone who mattered to him. Yeah, he says that to Duncan. He says Rachel's death made you the last soul that means a damn to me. And then Patriarch brings up the most offensive thing about Endgame, which is Connor's hairstyle. Do you guys know how that came about? And I really shouldn't know this. Even as a Highlander nutcase, I shouldn't know this kind of thing. But I do know it. You know how that happened? Connor's terrible hair. Well, you know in the first movie how he had that slicked back look? They were trying to do that, but one, his hair was too long, and two, you need a shitload of gel to do that. And besides, they made the dumbest decision in the world where, even though Connor McLeod is an immortal, to convey the idea that he's world-weary, worn down, they made him look old. Like, that's why he looks fucking terrible. That's why you can see him in movies 10 years after Endgame and he looks fine. He looks like he did in Highlander 3. I mean, there's only 6 years between Highlander 3 and Endgame. It looks like there's been 60 years. Connor, look, I don't think there's any doubt. Connor looks awful in that movie. Awful. He just looks so old. Chronic Snake is talking shit again. He's always talking shit when he's here. You can see the grey kind of breaks the illusion. See, this is the kind of passive-aggressive stuff he does. You all think he's talking about Connor, but I know he's talking about me. Yeah, they could have made him look younger. I mean, I know it's rough in Romania, like filming. They don't have the kind of setup they do in Western countries, but come on. You're right, Chronic. Yeah, the interviews he looks better. Oh, George apparently wants Kel to have his trailer powers. You know what I don't understand about that? Sorry, I better explain that. So, infamously, the Highlander Endgame trailer was made of bullshit. The Weinsteins did this a lot. Scenes of Kel using magical powers that were never going to appear in the movie just to make the trailer look good. But here's what I don't understand about that, right? It's one thing if you have a trailer for like Jay and Silent Bob, where you've got two characters standing there just talking, and that's fake footage that isn't for the movie. But what's weird about the Endgame stuff is that those are finished special effects shots that can't have been that cheap. So I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, that's exactly what they were trying to do, Gary. Make Connor look old. Peter says power is okay. Okay, move on to the questions. Yeah, so my favourite sword is a boring choice, but it's a practical choice. It's Kale's broadsword. Very practical choice. You know, I think the katana might be the best choice, actually. Because it's a compact for a sword, but you can wield it with both hands. If there's an issue, a limitation with Kale's broadsword is that it's basically one-handed. You know, you could go like that, but Optimus says Weinstein's belong in jail solely for butchering movies. Never mind the other indiscretions we all know of now. Optimus, are you trying to suggest that you didn't enjoy the 10 Hellraiser sequels we got? You know, I say that obviously sarcastically, but I wouldn't say I'm a fan of Hellraiser, but I've watched those sequels more than once. You know. Optimus says, I took my future ex-wife to Endgame. Lol. Is that why the marriage ended? I can't imagine that. I remember a story of someone who took their grandfather to see Highlander Endgame in the theatres because they were convinced it was going to be good. And afterwards, he apologised to him. And I get it. I love Endgame. But that was the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut is garbage. Highlander Lore. How is your edit of Highlander Endgame coming along? I don't have the footage. I need to get Douglas Arniolkowski, the director. Do you guys know Highlander Heart? It's a Highlander fan channel on YouTube. It's been around for a long time. They don't upload often, but I appreciate them because they do interviews, which I will never do, right? But they did an interview with both the director of Endgame and the source, and both say they had director's cuts that haven't been seen. I would do anything. Douglas Arniolkowski, if you're listening, Douglas, just okay. Never mind. It's not your choice. But look, whoever's listening and in charge, just let me do another edit of Endgame. We got 3 versions of Highlander 2. It's not right that we don't get another one of Endgame. Well, we're still talking about the kill numbers. Yeah, I don't think there's any way to make sense of that. Because, yeah, what, 661 kills for Kel. But we don't know if these kills... In fact, they can't include the kills of the Immortals that were killed. Like, Duncan kills Grayson, Season 1, Band of Brothers, Episode 13, right? Grayson is one of the few Ancient Immortals left. How many has he killed? I think the number of Immortals that Grayson himself killed would be more than 275, maybe? I don't know. Okay, there's a question I raised in this month's bonus video, because this month's bonus video is kind of an Immortal focus, because as I say in the video, basically, like any YouTuber who makes complicated videos, you're very often going to come away and notice things wrong with your video, because if they're so complicated, no matter how many times you check, you'll miss something. But for the first time this month, I regret a choice I made. I regret putting Andrew Ballin at 5th place in my top 5 Season 1 Immortals. It should have been the wonderful Alfred Cahill here, so that's what this video is about. But here's like a really specialist question. So at the end, Duncan beheads Alfred Cahill, who at the time is wearing chainmail. Now I could be wrong, but I just don't think that a sword could cut through chainmail. I think a sword could puncture chainmail with a thrust, but could a sword really cut through chainmail? I don't know about that. It's always bothered me. The Immortal Rumus says, did Highlander Endgame get a theatrical release over here? Not as far as I know. I don't think it did. Now that I'm older, I prefer Connor over Duncan. But it was the other way around growing up. Connor isn't as judgmental. No, he's not. Yeah, I make a point of saying that in the video, George. It's funny you should say that. Because I do make a point of emphasizing, you know, it's easy to forget. Okay, here's a bit of behind the scenes stuff here, right? Okay, why not? So, here's my setup, right? This is the audio recording of the script. And here's my stuff, right? So, I don't have to record Highlander scenes over again. So, like Highlander 1 scenes. Brenda Discovery church scene. You know, I very organised, right? Also, like the overlays. Video assets. Overlay elements. These are all the elements that I placed over the clips. And then here also, the place I write the script. Now, what does I say at this point? And this is how insane I am. I don't have to specify what clip I want to use. I just write scene because I know exactly what I want to do off by heart. Where's the SES stuff? Yeah. It's easy to forget given how he carries himself, but Cahill has a background in the SES according to the events of Avenging Angel. Again, he's such a slight man, you don't think so? Yeah. I say, like Caleb Cole, like a lot of fans don't like this character. But the reason I was able to make a whole video about him is because the more I thought about it, the more like he's a good example of what you want in an immortal, even if you don't like him specifically, you know? He's got a deep backstory with his abusive stepfather, which is where he gets his religious stuff from. He has an interesting first death because he wakes up in a Templar museum. You know, he's just a great character overall. Oh, and I do ask this in the script, and but I don't ask it in the script because that script is for a bonus video, so there's no point asking because it's not to like a wide audience. But what I say is, the actor who plays Cahill is called Martin Kemp, and he's really popular over here because he's one part of the band Spandau Ballet and he used to be in a soap opera, but I don't know how popular he is outside of the UK, but he's a great actor. Yes, Optimus, 100%. Damon Case was an intriguing character, yes. 100%. I don't know if it was right that he was so determined to kill the amazing... Why am I forgetting his name? Is it Malini? Is it Malini? How can I forget this? The amazing... I'm sure it's... Is it Malini? Oh, fuck it. The magician guy. Danny. I don't know, it doesn't seem right to Damon Case. It seems like someone like him would want a more worthy opponent. I mean, even Martin Hyde from season 2 Prodigal Son, you know, doesn't kill Duncan because he's not worthy at the time. He wants Connor. Chimoli, thank you, Optimus. Immortal Chimoli. Son of a bitch tries to behead Duncan. It took me the longest time to understand what Duncan was saying. And I eventually realised at the end he says, after he escapes the handcuffs, he says, something about Houdini, but you, Danny, are no Houdini. He says it so fast you can't tell. And Pretorix thinks I'm right about the chainmail. Optimus says he hates Martin Hyde's character in a good way. At least he never hurt the true king, the hidden power behind the Immortals and the Watchers, Maurice, because he actually has a conversation with Maurice. Yeah, sorry, where was I? Filming has allegedly wrapped, so I wonder how much post-production we will see / hear. What do you think? I don't know. Okay, I want to clarify some other things as well. So first of all, no, when I made that video saying I want there to be stuff released for Highlander, no, I don't think the studio owes us, as someone suggested I was saying. I would never be that entitled. But then on the other hand, the fans are going to help them make it a success. They were just suggestions, they were just advice they could give or take. If they don't, then fine. But one of you, in fact 2 of you, rightly pointed out in the comments something that occurred to me as well. Now, as I said, my videos are the extent to which I interact with the internet. But I fucking hate the internet. I hate social media, especially X. It's a shithole of miserable people trying to make other people miserable. So I don't have anything to do with it. So I could be wrong because I'm not that well connected. But someone said this in the comments and I agree with them. I feel like I only heard about Masters of the Universe about a month before it was in the cinemas. One day I saw some article and it said Masters of the Universe hit cinemas at this date. And I honestly thought to myself, wait, they finally made that? Because for years you've been hearing rumours and I'd heard nothing about it. And I swear to God, the marketing only really got really fast, really aggressive, and the 2 weeks before the cinema release. Again, I could be misremembering because I don't keep an eye on that stuff, but that's what it felt like. And this woman and someone else in the comments said, "Is it just me, or does it seem like people don't market anymore?" And I said, I feel that way. I could be wrong, but I feel that way. And that's another reason I made that video, because Highlander is coming from the same studio. I will be so fucking mad if we don't hear anything about Highlander like a month before release. That will be an insane decision. Insane. Optimist says a working title for Highlander 4 was A Search for Connor and A World Without End. Yep, you're correct. And in fact, I've got the script that's called A World Without End. Yeah, Gary affirms my perspective. I mean, with He-Man, I don't think it would make a difference. Because I just don't think, one, there's a massive He-Man fan base to sustain it. And two, I don't think you can make anyone care about He-Man. But again, they better not do that with Highlander. They just better not, you know. I should have said this in the video. I kind of did or implied it, but it's true. If I was working for Amazon, right, and let's say I was in marketing and I stumbled upon like my channel, for example, or any other Highlander fan content, I'd say to myself, wow, we can get these people to market for us. If we just throw these people a bone, they'll just churn out content for us. We'll, you know, we won't have to spend so much money. That's what I'd be thinking. And you know what? They're right. You know, they're right. Oh, look at Optimus uttering blasphemies. Saying that Davis and Panzer were terrible producers. It's funny. Clancy Brown didn't like them at all. Look, they were colourful characters. They were colourful characters. Fisherick says, you have to remember that He-Man had a dude named Fisto. You just have to blink a few times. Yeah, a lot of strange He-Man characters. Mark says, Lambert tried to keep the connection between the films, but it was a very tough path. And perhaps a substandard script. Yeah, he did. He tried his best. Optimus says, I can't forgive them for Highlander 2, David. That's just a fucking weird thing to say. Like, it's like saying, I can't forgive them for Citizen Kane. I can't forgive them for The Godfather Part 2. It makes yeah, but for those who don't know the Highlander 3 story, Davis and Panzer did interviews before Highlander 3 saying, this movie's going to bridge the gap between the series and the movie universe. And why not? Because Connor had made a cameo in The Gathering, the first episode of the show. But basically Christopher Lambert was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. These movies are mine, and they're going to be my own thing. So that's why, despite that interview, there is no reference to the series in Highlander 3. And I would assume, or I did assume, that Highlander fans would agree with me and think that's annoying. But some of you have agreed with Lambert. You like the fact that the series and the movies are different. Who's to say? The Immortal Remus says, actually, you're not wrong. And not just films, but even decent series can fly under the radar more frequently than they used to be, as marketing is really neglected these days. I said it earlier. I like a few series. Besides Highlander, I love Conan. I love Scream, right? But if a Conan or a Scream movie fails, I might be... You know, I wish it didn't, but I wouldn't bother me emotionally. See if this Highlander movie gets released and it fucking fails. I'll be so mad. Like, someone in the comments said a funny statement. I don't know why he said this, but he basically implied that karma should ensure that Highlander fails. And I said to him, sorry, buddy, but if karma is involved at all, we Highlander fans should be in for the best franchise ever, because God knows we need the break. We Highlander fans have been cursed since 1991, basically.